Good evening, everyone. We are in the regular business meeting of Tuesday, May 15th. Health and Swallow, Peace Squamish, Oweo. Welcome to the traditional territory of the Squamish Nation. Looking for a motion to adopt the agenda from Council, moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by Councillor Pryor. And it is an amended agenda. Let's just make sure everyone's aware of the amendment. What is the amendment? Oh, the very last item on was the just the library appointment. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, motion carries. Are there any notices of motion? Seeing none, pardon me. We have a request to proclaim July 21st Global Day of Inclusion. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Black-and-Wolf. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. Consideration of unscheduled public attendance. Is there anyone in the audience who has an urgent matter that needs Council to address before the next meeting? I don't see any. We have no public hearings. However, we do have one timed item. Is it a timed item? Mm-hmm. One timed item, DEP permit development variance permit number 133 Gambier Avenue. Oh, right. Sorry. I don't have it on my agenda yet. Oh, sorry. First up, we have community staff reports, community services, unsightly premises hearing 38140 3rd Avenue.
Good evening, Council. My name is Rick Farina. I'm the Manager of Bylaw Enforcement and Animal Control for the District of Squamish. Before you is a report from Community Services recommending that you declare several items situated at 38140 3rd Avenue, Squamish, a nuisance under Section 74 of the Community Charter. Additionally, there is a recommendation to impose a remedial action requirement to remove all the nuisance items not removed by May 31st, 2018 under Section 17 of the Community Charter and direct staff to recover all expenses as property taxes. Just give you a brief background. November 2015, Bylaw Enforcement observed a large quantity of unsightly materials being stored at 38140 3rd Avenue. Bylaw Enforcement immediately began working with the owner to gain voluntary compliance. Compliance wasn't gained. The district began an injunctive process to gain compliance through a court order. The site is now approximately 85% compliant with the remaining items identified in the following presentation. The items of concern: at least 8 bicycles, 5 motorcycles, an automotive engine block, a variety of automotive engine parts, several wood pallets, inflatable boat, large quantity of broken construction bricks, a patio deck full of discarded electronics, patio furniture and garbage, indoor furniture stored outside, large quantity of household garbage strewn throughout the property, assorted building materials and tools, upright commercial freezer and coolers, and unmanaged vegetation. The following pictures are what we observed when we first noticed the unsightly premise as described earlier. This is the backyard of the property adjacent to some businesses just off of 3rd Avenue. It's a corner lot. So you might be able to see a boat, a 5th wheel trailer, a crane truck, building material, and whatnot. Additionally, here's just another picture from another perspective: a high-ab crane, construction material, a shed, a trailer, some outdoor or some indoor furniture. Additionally, the crane truck that you've seen in some other photos, the top of a boat, and at the rear of the property you might see a 40-yard container, garbage container from Kearney's. Just another shot again, and behind what you see there are automobiles, automobile parts, household goods. Essentially the yard was full. This is what it looks like partially today. You notice that the Kearney's bin is gone, most of the debris is gone. At the back of the property there's still construction debris, inflatable boat, pallets, and this sort of thing. However, as we move towards the house, you'll notice an assortment of bikes, furniture, tires, and a lot of the stuff you can't see are like outboard motors and whatnot. Again, here's just another shot from a different perspective. A large. Now we notice that there's a number of motorcycles and garbage strewn throughout the property. It's just another shot from that same location. We have the cooler that I mentioned previously, shower stall, sink, bicycles, and construction debris. This is the back deck. Now, I will mention that yesterday a small dumpster was brought in to clear off this deck. All these items you see in the picture still remain on the property. They're just in a dumpster that hasn't been removed. And I'm open to any questions that you might have.
Council, any questions? Council Clark?
So what's the plan?
The plan is by the end of the month, May the 31st, if we get a council resolution tonight, that if that debris isn't cleaned up, then district's going to hire a private contractor to come in. We've got a quote, and it's in the report, and clean it up and then apply to property taxes.
Is the person living there that had all that stuff?
That's
I'll just quickly go to Robin.
So the report that's before you today is a remedial action order and an unsightly premises bylaw order against the owner of the property.
Yeah.
Currently, there's no one living there.
No one's living there.
That's the tenant was evicted in the fall.
So technically, anything on the property is the owner of the property is
responsible.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, we do give an opportunity for the owner to speak if the owner is here. I don't see anyone. Council, there's a recommended motion in front of you. Should I read it off? Should I have to read it off?
No.
I don't think I need to read it off, but if council would like to move. Moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by Councillor Race. Any discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Next timed item is development variance permit number 133 Gambier Avenue.
Just walk inside.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Carrie Hamilton, planner here at the District of Squamish. Presenting to you today Development Variance Permit 133 for property located at 38835 Gambier Avenue. The subject property highlighted in red is located at the far east side of Denville. The property is surrounded by RS2 zoning on the north and west. It shares its south property line with an RM2 multifamily zone property. And to the east is resource zone Crown land, currently used for the Discovery Trail network. In March of 2014, 38835 Gambier Avenue was granted an interior side setback variance from 2.13 meters to 0.91 meters for the purpose of extending a kitchen and a deck. The owners of 38835 Gambier Avenue would like to build a laneway accessory dwelling unit, called an ADU for short, on their property. One ADU is allowed in every residential property to a maximum size of 70 meters squared. The size of the ADU proposed is 52.7 meters squared and would exceed the RS2 zone's allowable lot coverage, which is why a variance is being proposed. The variance to allowable lot coverage would be from 33% to 36%, the difference being of 3%, and that is equivalent to roughly 200 square feet, or 18.6 meters squared. Staff are not supportive of this variance for the following three reasons. The first being lot coverage. Lot coverage regulations are intended to control the size and extent of a development on a property, to minimize the impacts of development on neighboring properties and amenities, and to allow for open space on the property to mitigate environmental impacts of development. With a 33% maximum lot coverage provision in the RS2 zone, that provision is standard and fairly generous to allow for reasonable build-out of a low-density residential lot of this size. Second reason is for precedent. This variance may set a precedent in the evolving and densifying neighborhood of Denville. Over the last few years, the district has relaxed ADU provisions such as setback requirements to make sure that the full range of property sizes can accommodate an ADU. The third rationale is options. Staff also see two viable alternative options to supporting a carriage home on the spot without going through a variance. Staff have identified and presented to the applicant two alternatives to avoid the proposed variance. One is to build a small ADU to comply with the lot coverage. This would result in roughly 366 square feet for a carriage home, and this equates to roughly 200 square feet less than the carriage home proposed. Two is to remove half of the existing deck, which is about 400 square feet, to comply with lot coverage and still achieve the desired ADU size. Staff feel it is relevant to highlight the progression of how this decision came to be before Council this evening. The applicant first approached the district with questions in December of 2017. The original preliminary design addressed through general inquiries proposed a 6% variance to the lot coverage. Planning at the time did not support the 6% variance and encouraged the applicant to explore other options, including a reduced variance of 2 to 3% and reduction in the existing deck size. An official application was made in February of 2018 with a 3% variance request. The file began review in March of 2018, and then upon official application review conducted with all building and planning staff, which is only done after an official application, a variance was deemed unsupportable. Throughout the review, staff have had a number of over-the-counter and phone conversations with the applicant to explain our rationale. In April of 2018, staff sent an official post-application letter which included a formal rationale for no support, as well as the two suggested alternative options. The applicant, by the right, has chosen to proceed with the application without staff support, which brings us to this evening's meeting. So legislated and district processes for engagement were followed for this application. No comments were received at the time of this report to Council. However, this afternoon, staff received one letter of support by the applicant attached with 35 signatures from neighboring properties. Staff's recommendation is that the District of Squamish not authorize the issuance of development variance permit number 133. Alternatives to this recommendation include that the District of Squamish authorize this development variance permit for 133, including which would allow the variance to the lot coverage from 33% to 36%. That concludes.
Thank you. Questions?
Could you go back to the slide that shows the two yellow blocks with the options, please? So that one, when you're looking at the deck, what portion would have to be removed? Is the 19 square meters or the option 2 portion?
Through you, Mayor, this is just a very general example, just to show the numbers itself would have to be half of the actual deck would be removed. Again, the square footage of that deck is generalized at 400 square feet, so I don't know exactly how the applicant would go about reducing it, but it's about half of what the existing deck is.
Okay, maybe it's just the angle. It looks like a bigger piece and a smaller piece. But so
yeah,
it's
I could have
approximately half the
changed.
deck.
Sorry, I could have changed the orientation of that. It's just a general diagram.
Any other questions for clarification purposes? Councilor Carr.
Thank you. I thought carriage houses were allowed to be 750 square feet now.
They are, but you can't, there's a maximum lot coverage. That's, the issue is the maximum lot
So
coverage. It's not the
has
size.
that deck got living space below it? Or is it just a freestanding deck?
Through you, Mayor, there's no living space below it, but decks do account for lot coverage.
Is the deck covered with a roof?
Through you, Mayor, no, it's not.
In terms of how we equate lot coverage, they're asking for a 201 foot variance for lot coverage, not for the, they're not exceeding the size of a garage.
Now, do the setbacks on the house conform, or they look like they're a little tight too? Is that what that is? That dotted line is the setbacks?
Yes, so through
I
you,
don't
Mayor.
think setbacks are an issue.
No.
They're not
They
asking
did
for a variance
receive-
and setback.
No, not for this variance. They did receive a reduction to their interior side setback, which is on that upper side there.
In a
They did
previous
receive that prior to this application.
I remember that one. Yeah, it's like 3 feet now, isn't it, from that little bay window?
I can give you, it's right here. So 2.13 meters to 0.91 meters.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I just want to remind council, we have to speak to the variance and not necessarily decisions that have previously, they give context to it, but they're not actually up for debate. Is there anyone else who has any questions for clarification purposes? Councillor Elliott.
So I know the proponent has provided some letters in which they might have anticipated that a variance of 2 to 3% might be acceptable, and then clearly something has changed in staff's thinking between January and now, and I'm wondering if you could just help make that bridge.
Definitely. So through you, Mayor, when we get these general inquiries, we do our best to answer the questions and look at different opportunities and guide an applicant in making an application. But we don't, until there's an official application, we don't go through a thorough review of bringing this application to other planning staff or bringing it to other building staff or other relevant staff within the district that this would impact. So at the time of an official application, we did bring this to a building meeting and we did bring it to a planning meeting, and through both of those meetings we concluded that it would not be supportable due to the 3 rationale and reasons that we presented today.
Thank you. I don't see any more hands, so I'm just going to read this statement and then we can speak to the variance. The proponent and members of the public will be given the opportunity to be heard or present written submissions respecting the following requested variance to the District of Squamish zoning bylaw. Variance to section 8.4 residential 2 RS2 maximum lot coverage from 33% to 36%. After I have confirmed that it is your turn to speak, please approach the podium and commence your remarks by clearly stating your name and address. Please note that speakers will be given a maximum of 5 minutes to address. Is there anyone who would like to speak to this variance? Come on up and state your name and your address. Come up to the podium. And if you represent yourself, a business or an organization.
Hello, my name is Matthew Shepherdfills. I live at 38835 Gambier Ave. The reasons we're here for this evening tonight. Thank you for showing up for this.
Welcome.
Okay, I'll keep it brief. I made bullets and notes just to get my points across. Long story short, 11 years ago we moved to Squamish. There was 3 of us, our family. We had a baby at the time, right? And now we have 4 children. There's 6 of us. The reason for the previous bylaw variance was because we live in a 1966 rancher and it was too small at the time, and our 4th kid was a surprise. So now there's 6 of us. So that modest increase was just enough so we didn't have to move because we couldn't literally get by with the fridge and the door would open. Right? So that's why we did that modest increase and made it work, right? So anyways, we fast forward up till now. I'll have to say this, but like the reason we're doing this initially is, as it turns out, 2 of my children have developmental disabilities. My daughter Marley, my oldest 11, she has been diagnosed, right? And we're planning for the best scenario, but there's a real possibility that she's not going to be able to live independently with what her disability is. And so that's how we went down this whole road in the first place. And we started looking at other options of how we're going to plan for my children in the future. If I don't figure this out now, there's gonna be a price I'm gonna pay 10 years down the road from that. So we run around, we had other options and investment opportunities, but then friends of ours suggested, like, hey, Denville isn't it zoned for a carriage home? You guys should really look into that. So we came to council. This is where it all started. So over the phone, I try to live by emails, but I can't like keep everything like that. My conversations recorded, so I do the best I can by writing things down like this, right? So we originally asked for the 750 square foot size home because 2 of my children do, and that's livable, right? But it's tight. And then when we talked to council, like, well, if we move forward on this, what would you guys support? We need some indication of what to move on with this. I understand that you have to have a formal review at some point, but where do we move on this? We got information back saying the council would not support 6%, but they would support up to a 3%. That was what we moved on. So it was okay, so do we move on this? Yes. We went through the developmental process, hired an architect, went down this road. That's a 1 bedroom and that's small. Otherwise, if we didn't get this, 3% gives us a 600 square foot carriage home. Otherwise, the 400 square foot is too small to be tenable, I feel. Would you, anybody here want to live in a 400 square foot room independently? It's a bachelor. So anyways, that brings us down to here. We submitted the plans and everything was going along accordingly, right? And then on April 10th, about 3 weeks before this meeting approximately, we received a letter from planning saying it was not supported after they had already advised us over the phone and via email that they would. Well, we had committed to this course of action for the future planning of my family and letting other windows of opportunities close. So what we're really talking about here is a difference of 200 square feet, right? To make it worthwhile for somebody to live and age in place in the community. Otherwise, we're looking at other options like selling our house or going in equity to try to, we can't, it's unaffordable now at best, right? So this is an option that's doable for us. So the following, following the procedure of the district's 100-meter notification radius of our variance proposal to our neighbors, we too did our own 100-meter radius to our neighborhoods. Well, that's what the signatures are. So we went around face to face, talked to everybody and told them this is what we're doing. This is what we were, on the indications of the planning department, we went down this road because of that, right? So we went around, we talked to everybody, and nobody said anything bad about it at all. In fact, the only thing they were worried about is that you guys wouldn't support us in doing it, right? In getting this variance passed. So no one raised any concerns with the letter other than that they hope council would support us. So after explaining what our unique situation is to our family, they passionately responded in favor of not having families move out of town or be under increased financial pressures caused from housing issues in Squamish. They also related to the love of having families age in place and that there just isn't really anywhere affordable to live independently in Squamish anymore, let alone if you have a developmental disability. And this is my last page of bullets and then I'll be done. They passionately put their names and addresses and contact info down the letter of support for the District of Squamish Council to review. Now, here's the answer to the precedent-setting argument that was just displayed here from my point of view. The planning department's expressed they don't think that a variance, that they think this variance would be precedent-setting. Because we're faced with factually specific needs with regards to 2 of my children and their developmental disabilities, this is a pretty narrow margin of precedent. There would have to be another family in my same situation that is planning for the future independent living of them in the very real possibility that they, or us for that matter, will not be able to afford housing even at this time, let alone in the future. Furthermore, if supporting families with special needs to create housing, it's only 200 square feet that we're talking about here, to age in place in the communities in a reasonably sized carriage home is a precedent at all, it would be a good one to set, I think. And then the deck removal argument, for my answer to that, is removing the deck was never an option for us. We were led down this road by the planning department. We were looking at other avenues to support the needs of my family, but those windows of opportunities have now closed. Furthermore, if removing the deck was an option, we wouldn't even be here right now. We would have gone through this whole entire, we wouldn't even have gone through this whole entire variance process in the first place, concerning everybody's time and money. Not only is it a safety issue as a second means of egress and prevents people from falling off the 6th floor height, so split level, to the ground, it also provides privacy between our immediate neighbor, Mr. Chris Lennon, who is present at this time and has requested to speak to council regarding this issue. In closing, I want to thank the mayor, Mayor Heinzman, and city and council for their time and effort. Please help me and my family to provide a reasonably sized carriage home for the likely event that 2 of my 4 children with developmental disabilities may not be able to afford to live in their own hometown. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak at this public hearing? Come on up, state your name and your address, and if you represent yourself, a business or an organization.
Thank you, Council. As briefly introduced, my name is Chris Lennon. I live at 38841 Gambier Avenue. I'm a lawyer at the law firm Lennon Allen. I'm not representing anybody in these proceedings. I do have knowledge of the circumstances underlying and leading up to the application at issue tonight, but most importantly, as mentioned, I'm the immediate neighbor to the north of the lot in question. I want to speak in support of the application and make 2 main points in that regard. First, I believe the unique circumstances and interactions between the applicant and the planning department are such that we're counseled to now refuse the application as made. I believe significant procedural fairness issues would likely arise, and also the economic loss which would be faced by the applicant having been led down this road to pursue this course of action based on the initial assurances of the planning department that they would support the 3% variance as requested. Second, and irrespective of the procedural issues at play, as an immediate neighbor, I wish to wholeheartedly endorse the request. So first, with regard to the unique circumstances, as the applicant has submitted and has actually quite eloquently laid out the entire process, they were initially considering various options to cater to the required livable needs of their growing family. And it was really only after being provided the written assurances, I remember specifically being surprised at the time to see that there were written assurances provided by the planning department that they would support the required 3% variance. Only after getting that did they move down this avenue, discount other options to them. Armed with those assurances, they engaged, as mentioned, an architect, other professionals, began to outlay certainly non-trivial amounts of financial investment to pursue this avenue, this course of action. And as a result, I would submit to council that giving the planning department's last-minute retraction of its support, were the application now refused, I think the decision would likely be procedurally unfair. I also further would suggest that the applicant would be well within their rights to look at how they would be compensated for the financial outlay that has already been expended because of the initial indications of the planning department. Separate and apart from those issues, I just want to speak as a neighbor and say that I see no problem, and I've been provided with assurances in the letter that my immediate neighbors also see no issue with the variance requested. As mentioned previously, I know that the precedent-setting matter has been raised, but as the applicant mentioned, I think the unique circumstances here and the specific facts that give rise to this application would create a very narrow precedent, and likely one that was easily distinguishable on its facts were attempted to be relied upon in a similar variance request. And finally, as kind of summed up by the applicant himself, I would just submit quite simply that if we're setting a precedent that allows long-term residents to remain in place, cater to their families, and reasonably address with very minor variance requests the long-term livability needs of their family in what is increasingly a housing affordability crisis that faces our community. That's the extent of my submissions, and again, I thank you for giving me the time to speak.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to the variances? Council, are there questions? Council Fryer?
You know, it's quite a simple variance, and you get more.
Is there a question, Council Fryer?
I'll work on it.
It's like Jeopardy,
well,
you got to frame it in the form of a question.
I mean, I don't like the tone, I got to say that. You know,
Okay.
I mean, it's not anything there, but it isn't a big variance, but having your neighbor lawyer come up and.
Is there a question, Council Fryer? We'll get to the debate part later.
Okay, no, I can't think of the question.
State your name and your address, and if you represent yourself, a business or an organization.
Dr. Day from Vancouver and Squamish, 1400 Vancouver Street. I have no connection with this variance application, but I'm got to say, just sitting here listening to it, I'm shocked, completely shocked that staff would be putting this family through the ringer over a couple hundred square feet of sun deck. It just it saddens me greatly that this is how people get treated. It just completely disillusion anybody as to how local government works. I just anyway, I'm just blown away by this, quite frankly, and I would strongly urge you to not make this family tear down their patio or sun deck. It's just ridiculous. They have 35 signatures from neighbors, including their immediate neighbor. I wouldn't get too worked up with legal issues. I don't think that's really the thing here. I think it's just fair play. And obviously planning has got something up their mind. I don't know what it could possibly be. And precedent is not something to worry about, because variances by their nature are singular. And variances do not set precedents at all. They set something, oh, well, that happened last year, and people say, well, who cares? Every single variance is a variance. And every variance, including a tiny little one like here, should be treated under its own merits. It doesn't create precedent at all. And how could you actually create a set of circumstances that exist here? It would be impossible anyway. So there's no precedent being created, just fairness, treating a family with dignity and respect. I urge you to allow this variance. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this variance? I'll ask for a second time. Is there anyone who would like to speak to this development variance? And I'll ask for a third time. Is there anyone who would like to speak to this development variance? Seeing none, Council has a couple options in front of them. Councillor Reyes?
Thank you. I'll move that we authorize the issue of the development variance permit as set out on the agenda. And I'll speak to it in a second.
I'll second that.
Thank you. So I take staff's point, and I can understand the concern about setting a precedent, but I don't often do this, but I happen to agree with the previous speaker that talked about the precedent setting, and in my former profession, precedents were quite important, and they were actually, in many cases, binding. But this is not, in my mind, precedent setting. It is not binding future councils. To me, these are single site-specific issues. And for example, if the deck, which manages to find itself in this formula, was enclosed living space, and we were faced with the same numbers, I would not be in favor of this, but it's not. And so I am prepared to support the issue of the development, the variance permit. In doing that, first of all, although I'm sympathetic with the family situation with the children, when you're talking land use like this, it's difficult, at least for me, to work that into a land use decision, in the sense that for the next person coming along, yes, you can do it if you have difficult children. No, you can't do it if you don't. So it doesn't, for me, it just doesn't work into the decision. I'm persuaded because, first of all, it is a relatively small amount. Secondly, we are generally trying to encourage additional accommodation in our neighborhoods. And thirdly, as I stated earlier, part of the calculation is based on an open deck, which is not enclosed living space, which would make a difference to me when we're computing lot coverage or considering something like this in the future. So I will support this.
Would anyone else like to speak to this? Councillor Prior.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I support carriage houses. I really like to see carriage houses going in. And, you know, if that deck was not connected to your house, there wouldn't be an issue. You know, if the deck was freestanding. But, you know, I just wish the tone was a little different. And I didn't appreciate and I'm not gonna say threats, but, you know, we're all adults here, and I don't think that part was needed, you know, like suing the district because we're not agreeing. I mean, I like this. I looked at the carriage house and I thought, oh, that's a nice little carriage house. I wasn't gonna let a deck stop it. But, you know, consider sometime when you're doing it again to come in and be a little nicer to everybody.
Can I speak to that?
No,
Because
it's unnecessary. We're in the
Okay.
debate part. Thank you. Councillor Kent.
I will support this. I know we've always worked towards densification in Denville. It is a very minor 3% increase, and as Councillor Ray said, it's not actually internal in the building; it's just the deck. But I do tend to agree with Councillor Pryor. The tone was a bit offensive for somebody who doesn't represent the client. He certainly made us acknowledge that we might be liable somehow. I don't think that was a proper tone to take, but nonetheless, I will support it.
Anyone else want to speak to this? I'll speak to it briefly. I'm happy to support this one, mostly because of procedural fairness. I think if we gave you the impression it was sort of within the ballpark, I think it's fair to assume you took the work on based on that direction. So I will support this for that reason. Anyone else? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Moving on in the agenda, we have bylaws first readings. First up is the District of Squamish Building Bylaw number 1822, 2004 Amendment Bylaw 2018 Building Bylaw Update number 2587, 2018.
Just a second, I gotta load up my presentation. My name is Jonas Olniškas, Director of Community Planning, and today we're bringing forward the bylaw 1822, amendment bylaw number 2587, and it is largely related to step code implementation into the building bylaw, as well as a number of administrative and process updates. The bylaw hasn't been updated since 2004. And so this was brought forward initially to the April Community Development Committee meeting. So the objective of this update is to prepare for the implementation of BC Energy Step Code by July of this year, and to update, as I mentioned, administrative and process requirements. So just a quick overview. I know we've done this at a committee meeting. The BC Energy Step Code is an incremental approach to obtaining energy efficiency in buildings that go above the BC Building Code requirements, and it's a pathway to a net zero energy ready commitment that the province has made by 2032. It is a performance-based approach, though, so the Step Code is not prescriptive. It establishes a target that buildings need to meet, and it has 5 steps. Municipalities are able to determine to what extent municipalities want to subscribe to the step code, on which step and by when. The district has established a working group in 2017 to assist in setting the goals and desired step levels. This was represented by development and building industry. There's just an example of the different steps for Part 9 buildings. So those are smaller townhome, duplex, single-family buildings, and there's 5 steps involved. In Part 3, larger multifamily buildings, there's only 4 steps. And Step 1 in both scenarios is just assessing the efficiency of the building without having to do anything. So Step 1 is not changing anything you do. The last time we've had conversation with committee, council wanted to see a more aggressive approach towards implementation, and so we've revised the bylaw. Phase 1 would be this July, and so small residential buildings under 1,000 square feet, so those are basically carriage homes, and perhaps very small homes would be at step 1, and they continue at step 1 for the foreseeable future in the bylaw. Part 9 residential buildings over 1,000 square feet go to step 2 in July, and then step 3 in January. So within less than a year. And then by January 2020, they go into step 4. For part 3 buildings, in July, it would go to step 3 for residential buildings and step 2 for commercial buildings. And then by July 2019, would go to, actually I think this is, this is supposed to be 2020, in the bylaws 2020. By July 2020, the requirements go to step 4 for residential buildings and step 3 for commercial buildings.
Can you stay there for
yeah.
a second? I thought council had directed more aspirational than that.
No, I think what's happened, I guess the crux is that phase 2 has now gone from 2020 to January 2019. So before we had 2 phases, now we have 3 phases, and we've brought part 9 residential buildings to step 2 and then step 3 within the next 8 months. So that was our understanding coming out of the committee meeting.
I guess I'm looking to my colleagues. I thought we had directed that right off the bat we would be a little more ambitious. Councilor Pryor?
That's what I understood too. I didn't realize, I thought we were going step 2, part 9, step 3, part 3.
We are. Step 3.
Starting tomorrow.
July.
July 1st.
Yeah. So this is more aggressive than it was the first time council has seen it.
Okay, well, that's what I thought.
I thought we were going to step 3 and we on the residential, step 3 in the part 3 residential, and we wanted you to look at the implications of the commercial stepping up because of some of the building envelope issues with people coming and going.
Yes.
That's what I thought council's direction was.
Yes, so we did look into that for step, and that's why we're proposing step 2 for commercial buildings, and then not till 2020, step 3. And that is, we've had some conversations with people in the regulation as well as in the construction industry, architects. And step 2 is a reasonable expectation for commercial buildings because the standards are so low right now. However, it will impact the form and character, the amount of glazing that we're seeing in the buildings. My understanding was that previously this was, I believe this was step 1 and then going to step 2 in 2019, in July of 2019, we brought that up. So we're going to start just for the rest of this year to step 2 and then step 3 in 2019.
What is the North Shore doing?
It's a very similar approach. I believe for commercial, they're staying at step 1. They haven't identified that that's going up. For part 3, it's going to step 3. And I think we're taking a nuanced approach on part 9 residential buildings.
They're going to step 3 on part 9.
I believe that may be the case, yeah.
I think that's what council's direction is at the last meeting.
Well, we can, if council feels really strongly on this, the bylaw could be amended.
Any more questions on this part, council? Okay, Councilor Pryor?
Now, what was the rationale to go step 2, step 3 the way we are now?
Somebody has said it's not a jump code, it's a step code.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good point.
Well, that's clever.
It's supposed to step people up to that standard, and I think especially the smaller builders haven't built to that standard in Squamish. So I think this is still a very aggressive timeline. going to step 2 and then step 3 within 6 months. I think it will still be a challenge. Maybe not for some builders, but for some smaller builders, it will be. And so it's a more phased approach than going right to step 3.
What about additions?
So the step code would apply to new builds. If somebody's putting an addition, I believe it would depend on the extent of that addition.
Any other questions on this part, council? All right.
Quickly, that's as we've gone through in the committee meeting, that's just the administrative changes that are proposed in the bylaw. I'm not gonna go over all of them, but they're fairly minor. We're just updating the bylaw to today's standards. We've done some changes since the last meeting. We've removed all the ticketing and enforcement related provisions, or most of them, because they live in a different bylaw. We've also removed the section that required all of the building to meet code requirements when an alteration is made, which council brought up. It doesn't really change anything in the bylaw because the code essentially says that you don't need to bring it up. So meeting the code just means that you don't need to do anything, but it is certainly more clear to the public. And then, as we've discussed, the steps have also changed. Staff are, as detailed in the report, are also recommending that because we've brought up the steps, that we remove the requirement for rezonings to go up to a higher step, because essentially it would result in rezonings going to step 4. And we've heard from, we've consulted with 3 architects that do work in the district, and there's a BC housing study that's been done on the cost of meeting the steps, and according to that study, the incremental capital cost of going to step 4 should be around 3%, but it's incremental, and what we're hearing from the architects and from some of the developers is that step 4 is going to be significantly more expensive than 3%. For instance, there's only one company in Canada that currently produces windows that would meet that step 4 requirement. So sourcing materials, the infrastructure is not quite there, and that this would be an extreme jump and would essentially penalize those applications that are going through rezoning. The North Shore municipalities are going to step 3 for rezonings. So that's a policy they've had since last year. But they're not going to step 4 this year, or they haven't identified if they're going to go in future years. So I think starting at step 3 for Part 9 and Part 3 buildings by the end of this year would be a good step, and I think we really need a little bit more data on what is the cost and the implications of going to step 4, and I think that's going to be generated in the next couple of years, because everyone, in the Lower Mainland, a lot of municipalities are going to be going that way. So I think because of the lack of data of the cost implications and the concerns that we're hearing in the industry, that we would recommend removing that provision, mainly because we've gone up on the steps now. So that would bump some buildings, Part 3 buildings would bump to the top of the steps, to step 4. That's the final step right away. And that, I think, is a significant step. We would have to amend our priority policy, because priority policy right now prioritizes all the buildings that are step 4. So I think a bit more data is needed before we go there.
Any questions, council? Council Pryor?
Yeah, so the step code is supposed to complete in 2022?
The province is going to allow municipalities to go to step 4 by 2020. Before then, the municipalities can incentivize it through rezonings or density bonusing, but the province has made a commitment to go to step 5 or step 4 by 2032, essentially.
4 for Part 9 and step 3 for Part 3.
Step 4 for Part 3 and step 5 for Part 9.
20, that's what we're aiming for by 20?
I'm just going to go back in slides for a sec. So it's a pathway to ensure that all buildings province-wide
It's
are
15 years.
net zero energy ready by 2032. Yeah.
Because I know a lot of the technology is still being worked on.
Yes. That technology exists in Europe, and so those materials can be sourced from Europe, but it is very expensive to do that. So the staff recommendation is different than it is in the report. In that we're proposing to remove section 17.3 and give the first 3 readings as amended. And section 17.3 is the rezoning effect.
Council, any questions? And, just to clarify, we're suggesting that, can you just clarify the rezoning piece?
Yes, so right now there's a provision in bylaw 17.3 which says that if you're rezoned, if your site has been rezoned after July 2018, that you have to be 1 step above the district base requirement, which would push Part 9 and Part 3 buildings by next year to Step 4.
I like that clause. Councilor Brown.
So step 4 on a Part 3 building is the highest level it goes.
Yes.
So they're going to be buying some of the materials from Europe.
Potentially, yeah. There's the Part 3.
And what percentage
Sorry.
what percentage of this?
Sorry, there's no procedure right now for the public to comment on it, sorry.
You have to wait your hands.
Yeah.
Okay.
Questions, anyone on the building bylaw?
What percentage of this would be built into community housing?
This is not a bylaw that's addressing community housing, it's addressing building code.
Yes, and that should be community housing.
But it's not a zoning bylaw, it's a building bylaw, which is how a building gets built, not what gets built. It doesn't apply to, it's not specific.
Well, I have to go one.
Thank you. Council, are there any questions? Don't have any questions. What's council's interest in this? What's in front of us?
Flooding.
I'll move the staff recommendation.
Moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Reyes. Councillor Elliott, did you want to speak to it?
I think that this is in line with my expectations of what I thought was coming back to us tonight on the step code. I'm pleased to see that we're moving to step 3. And I think it's reasonable to hold off on the requirements for step 4.
Please stop interrupting, thank you.
At least until we get into 2019 and have a bit more information. I think it's in line with the North Shore, and I appreciate that consistency for the time being.
Councillor Farr.
Yeah, well, I'm okay with it. I think going to step 4, though, the multifamily in 1 year is pretty extreme.
Anybody else? Councillor Reyes?
Thank you. I have to confess I don't remember in detail the discussion we had at committee about this, but I do recall the phasing in discussion, and I do recall it being advanced a little bit, but not extremely. And I do recall the discussion around commercial and the time it would be required to bring it up to an additional step around things like double entrances and so forth to make them a little bit more air efficient. So I am prepared to support this. I think this is a reasonable approach.
Thank you. I don't see any more hands. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We'll take a 5-minute recess. All right, we are back in our meeting. We are up on our bylaws 8A2, District of Squamish Water Rates Regulations and Water Extension Bylaw number 676, 1980, Amendment Bylaw number 2595, 2018.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Linda Clausen. I'm the Manager of Financial Operations. Today we are requesting Council give the first 3 readings to amend the Squamish Water Rates and Regulations and Water Extension Bylaw 676-1980, Amendment Bylaw 2595-2018. During a recent review of our outstanding utility accounts and related bylaws, it was brought to our attention that the current bylaw is not in compliance with the community charter. It lacks clarity on the steps and guidelines of disconnection and references repeal legislation. This amendment addresses those issues. Section 9E and 10 of the current water rates regulation bylaw relates to the authorization of the municipality to disconnect water services and how our property owner would be notified and potential penalties of the offense. The amendment removes Section 9E and replaces Section 10 and adds Section 11 and 12. In doing so, the amendment separates the provisions for disconnection, the notices, and the penalties to improve the bylaw clarity. The amended Section 10 includes the reasons for disconnection, while adding referencing for current bylaws and providing a time frame for non-payment. It also provides notice of process and representation to Council. Section 10 now aligns with Section 18 of the Community Charter. New Sections 11 and 12 in the amended bylaw expands further on the method of delivery of notice, the offense, and the penalty that were not clear in the original bylaw. Section 11 expands on the way and times notices can be delivered. It also includes email notices. And Section 12 adds the possibility of fines and/or tickets for offenses, which was not included in the bylaw previously. Tickets can be issued through our municipal ticket information bylaw to a maximum of $1,000, or under the District of Squamish Notice Enforcement Bylaw to a maximum of $500. If a person is charged or convicted in Section 263 of the Community Charter also allows for a maximum penalty of $10,000 if it is stated in a bylaw. The amendment also delegates the authority for water shutoff to a general manager, which is responsible for utilities and public works. The purpose of this is to act quick if we need to act quickly and circumstances require it, they can act. It also provides for a council to confirm, vary, or cancel the decision. So that our resolution is that the District of Squamish Water Rates, Regulations, and Water Extension Bylaw number 676/1980 and Amendment Bylaw 2595/2018 be given the first 3 readings.
Council, any questions for staff? I don't see any. Would anyone like to move first 2 readings of the water rates bylaw? Moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by Councillor Elliott. You want to speak to it? These are intuitive corrections. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next up is District of Squamish 3rd Avenue Pond Remediation Capital Works Loan Authorization Bylaw 2599/2018.
Thank you, Mayor Heinzman. My name is Christine Matthews. I'm the Chief Financial Officer. With Mayor's leave, I will talk to both item 3 and item 4 at the same time.
Absolutely.
These are both loan authorizations. As Council's aware, this just gives us the authority to borrow. It is not actually the borrowing procedure itself. We have 2 projects that were identified in the 2018 to 2022 financial plans. The large oil water separator and new forebay area for at 3rd Avenue Pond remediation. So we are borrowing $575,000 against a $600,000 capital project. And Bylaw 2600 is for funding of the technology transformation program. Overall, the current borrowing requirement for this 3 phases of the projects, as you know, there's multiple projects involved in the technology transformation project or program, is $1,405,000. However, we have a residual bylaw left over, Bylaw 2444, And so we are going to borrow $1,061,000 plus fiscal servicing. For the two bylaws, the Third Avenue pond remediation is a 15-year amortization period. If we were to take the borrowing today at 3.2% and a sinking fund rate of 3%, the annual debt service on that would be $49,813. For the technology transformation project, the annual debt would be $91,916. The average or the assessment value impacts of each of those respectively are 46 cents per 100,000 of assessment and 85 cents per 100,000 of assessment. We are recommending to council that this go by the electoral approval process, and these bylaws, if given third reading tonight, would be sent to the ministry next, and then an AAP or an alternative approval process would be put in place. If there's any further questions, I'm happy to address them. Otherwise, we are looking for 3 readings of those 2 bylaws.
Any questions on these? Don't see anyone. Would somebody like to move the first one, which is that the Third Avenue Pond Remediation Capital Works Loan Authorization Bylaw be given first and 3 reading? Moved by Councillor Ray, seconded by Councillor Elliott. I'll call the question. All those in favour? Opposed? Motion carries. And the second one is the Squamish Technology Transformation Project Loan Authorization Bylaw number 2600. Will be given first 3 readings. Moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by Councillor Blackman-Wolf. All those in favour? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Christine. We're on to second readings. We have consideration of District of Squamish Zoning Bylaw number 2200-2011, Amendment Bylaw Plaza at Junction Park number 2527-2017.
Thanks, Mayor Heinzman. Just load up the presentation. Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Asia Phil, planner with the Community Planning and Infrastructure Department. Tonight, I'm presenting Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 2527 for consideration of second reading. This bylaw presents a request to rezone the lands located at 37870 Cleveland Avenue from CD 37 to a new CD zone to allow for a mixed commercial and residential development, which is currently named Plaza at Junction Park. The application received first reading at the April 3rd, 2018 council meeting. So the proposed development is located downtown in a transitional area between our downtown commercial core and the creative mixed-use district downtown south. This is also the location of the gateway to the Squamish oceanfront. The lot's 1.65 acres. It comprises a full downtown block bordered by Main Street to the north, Vancouver Street to the south, Loggers Lane to the east, and Cleveland Avenue to the west. The applicant proposes to rezone the land to a new CD zone. This would replace the existing CD 37 zone. 2 mixed-use buildings with commercial, office, and residential uses are proposed. The northern building is 6 stories and has a 4-story employment space building attached to it. The southern building is 8 stories. There's 154 residential units proposed. There's 43,750 square feet of employment space. The proposed design intends to meet the district's parking requirements. There's an enhanced public plaza and active transportation corridor proposed for the section of Main Street that fronts this proposal, and this would provide connectivity to Junction Park. So the applicant has supplied a 3D model, which I'm going to play right now. So this is the northern end of the development. It shows the 4-story employment building.
I just want to take a moment to ask Councillor Pryor if he's a happy birthday.
And me too.
This is all for you, Ted?
It's not for
Sorry.
me. Not for
That's
me.
okay.
Go on, Peter. Thanks.
So yeah, so this is the Main Street end. It shows the 4-story employment building as well as the proposed public plaza and our active transportation corridor, which connects into Junction Park. And then the model should zoom out, and it shows the overall site context, including the adjacent development, which includes the main, which is the 6-story mixed-use development that's currently under construction. Studio SQ in the middle, and then House on Brewery and Inn to the south.
Can you go down the main street?
I'm not controlling it, so it's an
Oh.
animation. Sorry.
Here we go.
I can't make it do what I
I
want
thought you
to
were
do.
controlling it.
So yeah, so this, lastly, it shows this southern end of the development and the proposed 8-story building and how the proposal relates to the brew pub. And that's it. Does anybody want to see that again, or we can come back to it?
Wouldn't mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've been waiting a while for this.
We'll go again.
Thank you.
Oh, look, there's Ted.
Wait, it's so great, yeah, behind the bush.
I mean, this is way better for everybody. But the one that was done for the smallest lot development on Cleveland Avenue and Loggers Lane, that little tiny 25-foot by 35-foot 4-story building. I don't know if the planning department saw their 3D rendering.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, this is a good 3D rendering, Mike, don't get upset. But that one there was a drone flyby with the development superimposed, so you saw everything.
Thank you.
Duly noted.
Well, it's a difference, because it shows everything in the whole neighborhood.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll keep going if everybody's comfortable with that.
Yeah, please, thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to attempt to explain the CAC in more detail here. The applicants offered a CAC that goes above and beyond the targets in our current draft CAC policy in every aspect. So they've included 18 affordable housing units, 13 purpose-built market rental units, 15 adaptable housing units, and the public plaza improvements on the Main Street Road right-of-way are an estimated at a value of over $300,000 beyond the value of what they'd pay for typical frontage improvement requirements. They're also proposing an additional cash contribution, so this is just straight money for whatever the district would like, $165,000. And then they're meeting the active transportation and park amenities and all of the different cash and lieu values. And added up, that comes to a total of $235,046. So this other chart shows how the applicant's CAC compares to the previous development permit number 237. This was the one approved in 2008 and it's since expired. So 8 of the proposed 82 units from DP 237 were to be provided as restricted units. And these could be either affordable for sale units, which would be sold at below market value, or affordable rental. And that could be determined by the developer. In comparison, 31 of the proposed 154 units from the applicant's current offer are proposed as affordable or market rental units. There's also a total of 12,760 square feet of on-site public space that was proposed for DP 237. And the applicant's current offer proposes a total of 15,500 square feet of public space, although the proposed Main Street Plaza would be located off-site and on the district's road right-of-way. So over and above the DP 237 amenities, the applicant's offering that additional cash contribution. They're offering the 10% adaptable housing units as well as 2 public car share stalls to be located on site. So I just want to talk briefly about the Main Street improvements. So the applicants are proposing these extensive improvements to the Main Street Road right-of-way to create a large plaza space as well as provide an active transportation component to the project. So these plaza and active transportation enhancements would integrate into Junction Park and the OCM Pavilion, as well as the Main Street designated bike lane route, and it would be activated by the commercial development proposed for the north end of the site. This is a high-level conceptual design for the plaza that's shown in the figure to the left. The alternative to these enhancements would be similar to what is shown on the figure on the right. So typical frontage improvements would include a sidewalk, boulevard landscaping, and a few parallel parking spaces. And they would only improve the south side of Main Street. So staff are supportive of the conceptual plaza and active transportation improvements, and we'd like the opportunity to work with the applicant to enhance the district's public space, and this would occur through the development permit process if the application proceeds.
Yeah, this is the development of the golf course, right?
No, it's not.
So since first reading, the applicant has also offered an on-site public art contribution. This would be based on the City of Burnaby's public art program. The applicant would offer 1% of their construction budget of the entire project to be allocated towards public art. The process is straightforward for this, so the applicant would basically hire a public art consultant, and they would prepare a call for artist proposals, and then the public art committee, along with this consultant, the project architect, and an applicant representative would review the proposals and then select the artist who would then fabricate and install the art piece. And this would be one of the first developer-led public art installations in Squamish, and it would definitely contribute to enhancing our public realm in this area of downtown.
There's never been a public-led art thing in Squamish.
Can you please
get off it?
If you continue to interrupt the proceedings, I'm going to ask you to leave.
Yes.
So please,
Well, I'm sorry,
please,
but
no more
she
comments.
is misleading you.
No, she's saying the correct thing. Thank you.
I'll keep going. So the combined total of the commercial and the office space makes up 27% of the gross floor area of the development, and this exceeds the district's 20% employment space requirements that we recently approved for the C4 zone. There's continuous commercial uses along Cleveland Avenue, Main Street, and Vancouver Street, and they wrap around to the central mid-block plaza, and they also front Loggers Lane at key intersections. And the commercial frontage has been broken up into distinct frontages with varying widths, and it generally meets the Cleveland character frontage requirements, which were also approved earlier this year. So since first reading, the applicants revised the design of the northern 6-story building. They've pushed it further back from Cleveland Avenue so that the building now meets the upper story step back regulation.
Which one is it? 1, 2, 3, 4.
These are the figures. So the figures are on the left-hand side for the 6-story building. And the one on the top shows the original proposal and the setback line. And then the one on the bottom left shows the revised design that now conforms to the regulation. And then the southern 8-story building did not originally meet the regulation, and no changes have been made to this building. And this is the figures shown on the right-hand side.
And that will affect how many people's view that they were
I'm sorry, there's going to be a public hearing in a couple weeks if this passes second hearing, and you can speak at that public hearing. This is not a public hearing.
Thank you.
Asia, go ahead.
Okay, so we'll likely continue to refine the upper story design through the rezoning and the development permit process. There's a desire at the staff level to ensure that we achieve sufficient variation and interest for these upper levels in both the roof line as well as the building walls. And this shouldn't necessarily come at the cost of fully conforming to the step back regulation. So we'd like to ensure that there's some variation of those upper stories and not that it's just meeting the setback regulation. So a public information meeting was held April 23rd, 2018. Approximately 20 members of the public attended. We've received 29 public comments to date. 17 of these comments were in favor of the development and 6 comments were against the development. The top concerns that were voiced focused on the overall height of the buildings, loss of views, particularly of the chief, and concerns around parking. If the project proceeds past second reading, as usual, the public hearing notices will be sent to property owners and tenants within 100 meters, and will publish newspaper ads in the Squamish Chief. So the items required prior to consideration of adoption include a land development agreement. This would be to secure the applicant's amenity contributions, the building standards, and any excess or extended services. A housing agreement to secure the affordable and market rental units. Potential land dedication of the Loggers Lane and Vancouver intersection. And this would be subject to the engineering study that's currently underway looking at the truck turning radius that's required to facilitate the truck right of way.
If I can make one clarification, it
Yeah,
says...
Loggers Lane is still gonna have to happen, right?
Go ahead, Janice.
It says step 4 at the top of that list, and after today's discussion with council, that would be step 3, because we were moving this forward in anticipation of that rezoning effect. This was one of the projects that we received a lot of concern from the applicant around the implementation of step 4.
Okay, so jumping back in, yeah, the last few things, any statutory right-of-ways that would be needed for public access, a boulevard maintenance agreement, a flood covenant, and an environmental covenant if it's deemed necessary. So in summary, staff is recommending that council approve second reading and schedule a public hearing for June 19th. And that ends my presentation tonight. Thanks.
Thank you. Questions from council? Councilor Grace.
Thank you. I'm just curious about Main Street. If this proceeded, would be our intention then to close the road and dedicate it as park, or would you just leave it as a road?
Mayor Heinzman, through you, we just leave it as a road. I've had preliminary talks with our real estate manager, and we both agree that it would just be doing improvements that go above and beyond our normal frontage improvements, but that it's still a transportation corridor and it would remain district road right of way.
Thank you. Councilor Carr.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I don't remember having a real hearty discussion about Cleveland Avenue. I know we did discuss it, but I'm a little concerned about losing parking. And, you know, it's not like we got tons of parking in the downtown and we're losing a city block. So, is council going to get an opportunity to discuss this, or is this already considered second reading?
Are you talking about Main Street or
Yeah,
Cleveland?
Main Street.
You said Cleveland, so I was confused.
Main Street, sorry.
Main Street, okay.
I mean, I know we discussed it when Councillor Race brought it up that one day. Oh, that might be a good idea. And now here it is all penciled in. I'd like to know the real discussion that either staff or somebody's got some numbers around it. How many parking stalls we're losing? What's the property worth if it was taken out of road? And all that kind of stuff.
Well, it's not a legal parcel, so it's road right of way. There is probably some value to it, but we haven't done that valuation. There's, I believe, 6 or 7 parking spaces that are 90-degree parking spaces
What's
right
the
now.
potential parking spaces on there?
So the parking stalls that are going along in front of the main development, there's 4 parallel parking stalls going in there, and this is the same, of a similar width. So I'm assuming if they did just basic frontage improvements, there would be approximately 4 parallel parking stalls going there. We need that full right of way to do the bike lane along Main Street. So they wouldn't be able to park the 90 into the stalls.
Yeah. I'm just concerned that we haven't really looked at it, you know. And it sure looks nice having a park there. But I'm just, you know, I'm really concerned that we haven't had a real hearty discussion about all the other opportunities on that particular parcel, potential opportunities.
So just to summarize, there would be a potential loss of say 4 parking stalls in return for getting the plaza improvements.
4 parking stalls. And is that coming from a transportation expert?
That's coming from our staff.
Well,
Ted.
yeah, there's already, listen, there's
Councillor
already
Pryor.
7 or 8 angle parking stalls there. You go down there on Farmers Market weekend,
Get,
and there's 20 parking stalls.
Ted, you can see the either or that was shown just earlier in the presentation?
Yeah, so this is coming from the main development, and this distance is the same as the distance for the Pac West site.
And who drew that up?
And they have 4 parking stalls here. So I'm saying it would probably be very similar to that.
You're showing me the landscaping plan of the adjoining building.
Across the street,
Yeah, across the street.
to show you how the parking,
So
if we,
put it this way.
Councillor Pryor?
Does the rest of council figurehead we've had enough conversation about Main Street to comfortably donate it to this project?
it's donating it to the community, it's the community's built environment. There's a question through the chair, if any councillor would like to answer it. Councillor Rice?
Well, I think it's important to make it clear. In my previous question, I think highlighted it. This land isn't being donated to anybody. It is presently municipal land, it will stay municipal land, and it will be improved and changed from a short road into a plaza for pedestrian and cycling. But it's not going anywhere as far as ownership goes.
Anyone else want to answer that? Councillor Blackman-Will?
I think in this particular location, plaza intensive public use is more desirable than on-street parking. I don't think our on-street parking is the highest and best use for that. So,
Would anyone else like to speak to it? Okay. Any other questions for staff for clarification purposes? No? Okay. Would anyone like to put a motion forward? Are you moving second reading as outlined in the report, Councillor Rice?
Yes, I am.
Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Kent. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Rice?
Well, sure.
Well, you moved it. I just always go to the mover first. You don't have to if you don't want to.
I should have been prepared. Yes, no, I'm happy to support this at this stage, and I think this has been an evolution that we've seen since before the bylaw came to us in different forms of massing and so forth. And I think this is another step in that refinement, clarification of some amenity issues, and certainly in a position that I'm comfortable with it going out to the public hearing and public comment. So I'm happy to support it at second reading.
Councillor Elliott?
And the public hearing set for June 19th.
That was part of the motion.
Yeah, I'm happy to see this move forward to public hearing. I was pleased to hear staff talk about refining the design more at the next level. I remember ADP's comments right at the beginning that this is a really high profile site and we're going to make sure that the buildings really stand out there, I think. So, but yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing what the public has to say.
Councillor Kent?
I echo the sentiments of Karen and Doug, and I appreciate the fact that the proponent has worked with us in the design and worked with staff, and I'm looking forward to seeing this come out to the public.
Would anyone else like to speak? Councillor Pryor?
Yeah. I am also happy to hear there'll be a little more step backing in the top floors. I would have liked to have myself, I guess, obviously everyone else is comfortable with that, a better understanding of Main Street and, the lack of potential parking. I do like the idea of a park going out there, but I worry about the downtown. And, in these larger rezones, and I know Mike has done his best to add a bunch, but the extra cash that he added could have been substantially more than that, considering the up in zoning. And I think that our regulations for upzoning are a little bit weak for the community and a little bit heavier for the developer. So I would welcome the day when we get to revisit them.
Would anyone else like to speak to the second reading of this bylaw? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, just for the public hearing will be in council chambers on June 12th. 19th. June 19th at 6 p.m. Next up, Community Planning and Infrastructure, Winnipeg Street End Public Dock, Crown Land tenure.
All right, I'm back. So again, good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Asia Philp, planner with the Community Planning Department. So tonight I'm going to provide a quick update on the Winnipeg Street End Public Dock Project, and I'm seeking council authorization to submit an application for Crown Land tenure for the dock infrastructure. So as many of you have seen, construction has begun on the Sirocco mixed-use project that's located along Loggers Lane between Winnipeg and Victoria Street, and it fronts onto the Mamplan Blind Channel. As part of this Sirocco rezoning, the district secured a commitment from the developer to provide a public pier, ramp, and dock off of the end of Winnipeg Street down to the waters of the channel. This public infrastructure would also act as an access to a marina that's proposed to be located in front of the Mistral apartment building, as well as to the Sirocco Float Home community, which was approved as part of the overall Sirocco project. So according to the Sirocco Land Development Agreement, this water-based infrastructure should be constructed prior to occupancy of the first building. And as part of this infrastructure is to be located on Crown land, we need to apply for tenure with the Crown. So this map shows the location of the Crown land area that the district is seeking tenure over. It's actually just this really small white area that's outlined in black on the map above. We already have tenure over a portion of this Crown land lot, which covers the sea dike, as well as a 10-meter buffer into the water for future dike maintenance. And this is shown in the orange dotted outline on the map. As well, the Mistral and Sirocco developer has also applied for a marina tenure, and this is shown in the red outline on the map. And apologies, the color is not super distinct there. So to wrap up, staff are asking for a council resolution to submit for this Crown land tenure application for the pier, ramp, and dock off of Winnipeg Street. The formal recommendation is here, and does anybody have any questions?
Questions for staff? Councillor Pryor.
Yeah, thanks. Who builds the dock?
Squamish Blue Pacific Development, so the developer.
Yeah. And can you go back to the map, please?
Yeah.
The plan right there. That 30-meter setback from the dike walkway, it's district lease?
So it's a 10-meter
Oh, 10 meters, sorry.
buffer.
Yeah, 30 feet, yeah.
Yeah, so the area outlined in orange, which is the line closer towards the land, that's currently our, the district has a license of occupation, which is in process of being converted into a statutory right-of-way with the Crown.
I don't see orange.
I'll come over.
But it's
So it's this, so we have this area
so
already. We're missing this area.
Yeah, what are we going to do with that empty space?
The 10 meters? Well, it's for maintenance of the dock, if we need it in the future.
It stays open, we can put a little dock in there for kayaks?
We wouldn't, the dock is coming off the Winnipeg Street end.
Maybe show
We wouldn't be
what
occupying this.
it looks like, because there's ramps that go down to it, obviously, so.
Okay, yeah, back up one more, please, sorry.
Yeah, so the 10 meters probably somewhere in this area. And the marina application from Squamish Blue Pacific is aligned with the edge of the sea dike. So there'd be some overlapping between the two tenures, so they could potentially use this area as part of the marina as well. They'd just have to move everything when we want to maintain the dike.
As well as us using it. I mean, whose land is it?
It's the Crown's land.
Oh, it's not part of, it's part of our tenure?
It's both. So we have the tenure for dike maintenance and public access.
I'm just trying to understand if the district can put a little ramp down there and park some canoes and kayaks. Can the canoe club go there?
We can use this public dock for that purpose. And then the marina that's being proposed by Squamish Blue Pacific will likely be open to, like, the public could get a berth if they wanted to in one of those
I'm mostly
spaces.
thinking of the stuff in behind, that's all.
In this area here.
Yeah, because you could actually take a kayak out beside those float homes and get out either end and go for a nice
You
paddle.
can kayak anywhere in the water. You can go anywhere in the water with a kayak.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying that that'd be a good spot for storing. That'd be a good little, you got a sheet pile dike and then 30 feet out you've got a marina. There's 30 feet between that sheet pile.
Okay, but we're here to talk specifically about the Crown land tenure that we need to put the public dock on.
I realize that, but while the plan's up there, I just want to draw council's attention to an opportunity that we may not ever look at again. It's an opportunity.
Councillor Elliott.
With that Crown tenure, can the public dock go further out into the water?
I believe the navigable, I can't say that
Yep,
word.
that word.
Navigable channel.
Navigable channel is very close to the edge of this. Caroline, can
It's
you
right.
move?
Right
Yeah.
on the property line.
This pretty much goes right out to the navigable.
So yeah,
Trend Asia.
it's here, and yeah, so we wouldn't necessarily be able to extend further because we'd
So
be
just
encroaching.
something that's odd to me about the conceptual drawing is that the public dock ends where the commercial float parts end. So if you're standing on that dock and you want to look towards the chief, you're possibly looking at that C2. No, those are commercial units
But
there.
we can't extend it out.
So that's all I was wondering is if people can extend out a little bit.
No, I think, so the other kind of missing component of this is that
the higher lookout
and the Squamish Blue Pacific, they're in the midst of doing their detailed design right now. So this was like a highly conceptual, it might not even look like this, we're not sure, so. And then I guess these units, these are kind of the maximum footprint. So potentially something might be smaller if someone tows a floating business to go into that space.
And there will be another dock at the end of this Rocco development, which would probably have less impeded views because it's a district lot, water lot next to that.
And that's the Victoria Street road.
So with this design.
Councillor Pryor.
Oh, sorry, I thought you said 10.
I did not say a thing. Councillor Elliott, you're good? Councillor Pryor.
No, thanks. If the dock itself was reduced by 10 feet on either side, then we could get a boat on either side. Because right now, if there was a boat on the south side, it would just be in the neighbor's lease area.
So I'm assuming that the applicant's taking note of this and, yeah.
I'm not sure if you want to come and speak to that or not.
I'll just really quickly.
Wait till you get to the point and don't touch the mic.
God help you.
No. It takes at least 3 or 4 years off Kelsey's life, so.
Okay. I think there's a kind of, because you're looking at the design aspect, when you look at the marina and you look at the dock, there'll be a development permit, particularly for the marina, which you will see again. We did just get the conceptual developed. I don't want to show them to you guys because they're still very draft, but I appreciate your comments on heat views and commercial. And for starters, there's a lot fewer float homes, so you guys might be happy with that. But for two, the accessible ramp is a challenge. So you can see it there, it's actually even worse than that. So those are things that we need to work through with staff, but I just wanted you to know that for the marina, you're going to get a kick at it through DP. The parking's already in it. This is really just for the tenure to get that going. One of the requirements for soccer, or Sirocco, I heard really today Morocco.
We were just combining Mirage, Morocco, Sirocco.
So just so you know, we need to build that dock by occupancy of the first building. So we have to get DFO and we have to get all these other approvals. So the sooner we can move with this, because this is fundamental for that first dock. So the district needs it for public access. We need tenure on it to allow services to go through, to allow access to the marina and to maintain it. So it's a
and this is a tenure application, so we'll make sure that, these are great comments, but this is not the design of the dock per se. This is conceptual at this point. We're trying to, this is moving the tenure application forward so we can actually finalize.
Simply tenure.
This is simply tenure, so don't get too bogged down in this. And I think we can have offline conversations if people want to give you feedback. I'm sure they will.
Yeah, and I think to Councillor Parr's comment is that the public dock, that's the intention, is that people can come down there. As far as storage, that might be something to talk about at Pete.
Or it could be something that a paddling group wants to come and propose. So that's always an option.
Seems like there might be room underneath the gangway to make it accessible.
Any more questions about the tenure application? Council, anyone want to move the motion? Moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Race. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you. We have our financial services borrowing approval for fall 2018 MFA debt issue.
Thank you, Mayor Heinzman. Unlike the loan authorizations before, these loan authorizations were taken last year, and now at the completion of 2017 financial year, we're now ready to actually take two projects to borrowing. We are looking to take both the fall borrowing of MFA, $321,869 and $310,389 for a total of $632,258. As council's aware, we're not able to take debt ourselves, so we have to go through the regional government, and the two resolutions before you direct the regional government to proceed with the security issuing bylaw on our behalf.
Any questions? I don't see any hands. Is there anyone would like to, can I do both of those motions at the same time? Are they two separate things? Review them separately?
They're presented separately. I don't think so.
Okay. The first one is for the $321,869. Moved by Councillor Race, seconded by Councillor Kent. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And the second is for $310,389. Fire Capital Works loan authorization. I'll move that. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Race. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. There's consideration of appointing DBO Canada LLP as our financial auditors for 2018. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Elliott. I'll second that. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion carries. Thank you. We have a number of correspondence for action. The first is from Mr. Wengy regarding Community Grant House on Curling Club. Then the recommendation is that we grant the reporting extension. Moved by Councillor Race. I'll second that. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, we have a letter from the Royal Canadian Marine Search and Rescue. Support for emergency preparedness and a response. There's a recommended motion that it be referred to the emergency program coordinator and the fire chief. Moved by Councillor Race, seconded by Councillor Pryor. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. There is a letter from Mr. Anderson. Oh no, not Mr. Ms. Anderson. That council about bicycle use. This is worth a bit of a conversation, but I think ultimately it'd be great to there's a recommended motion that go through community policing. I think that's probably inappropriate, but it might be worth a bit of a conversation about this, or no? Nobody cares? I remember when I was a kid, we had to get a license for your bike. And you had to actually go and pass a test and all that kind of thing. And I actually thought it was kind of cool. I took my unicycle and I didn't pass because you needed to have a bell on your handlebars and I didn't have handlebars, so I didn't get one. But I think it's worthwhile doing some sort of education program. Councillor Blackenwell.
Well, my concern is that I think usually it's best left in an individual's hand to decide what is the safest way to bicycle. Because there are some streets where you want to face ongoing traffic if you're kind of, you know, depending on how fast you're going, different kind of circumstances. So like cracking down on cyclists, I mean, it should be motorists that should just be careful.
Yeah, no, I wasn't necessarily talking about cracking down. I was talking about educating people on, because we do tend to have an electorate who just seems to. Councillor Elliott, I hear what you're saying.
I would certainly like to see us figure out a way to be more proactive with education, because the problem that I face is that I teach my kids to go with traffic, and then when someone's coming at them, they don't know what to do. And they're still trying to make their decisions at a young age about biking safely. So it's a bit of a challenge. You know, we're trying to encourage these safe routes to school, and so we're trying to teach kids which side of the road to be on. And that being said, there's a ton of people parking right next to the the tennis courts right now in the bike lane. They're stopping and playing tennis, but they're parking the bike lane. So we know.
Yeah, thank you. I can remember also getting a license for my bike, but I don't recall doing a test for it. You had to pay about 50 cents, which for this
a lot of money way back when.
No kidding, for this little decal, which I thought at the time was an atrocious tax grab by the city of Vancouver. So,
be a lawyer.
But everything I've heard in riding bikes has been along the lines that you always ride with traffic. With respect to Councillor Blackman-Will's comments, I mean, I'm sure there are times when you would think it's better, and there might be situations, but the general rule has always been to ride with traffic, particularly on busier streets. And so, but there is a huge education component to this, and it's not just for the cyclists, it's also for the people driving automobiles, some of whom don't know what to do with the bike at all. So I think it is appropriate, and maybe it's the police that should be leading it through lectures at schools and so forth, at school liaison officers. I just went coincidentally through another bike safety with Rotary at Squamish Elementary this time, and they had a really good member of the RCMP there as well. In fact, there was a couple of them at one time, taking the kids through different protocols, but it was mostly related to intersections. Stop signs, etc., crossing streets, and so there wasn't really, at that time, sort of a moment to have a general education discussion about just riding your bike around the neighborhood and how you should be doing it. So I think there certainly is something there, probably through the schools. I don't know how you reach the drivers, but the police may have a way to deal with that.
Well, I can see community policing being a part of this, but I also see our active transportation and working with the school district. I think this is a joint effort. So maybe I'll entertain a motion to refer it to community policing and our transportation coordinator to discuss how we might improve the situation in Squamish. Moved by Councillor Race. I'll second that. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And we have a letter with regard to the Canadian Northern Youth Abroad. This is, we get young people from mostly Northwest Territories that come into the community every year, and we've supported their bus passes in the past, and I'm happy to move that we continue with that through council contingency. There's a seconder. Second by Councillor Blackman-Wolf. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We have a number of letters that are suggested received for information. I'll look to see if anyone would like any of these pulled from the agenda for a brief discussion. I would like to just speak to the Eagle Watch. They do a phenomenal job every year. I think it's 20 years in the making now, and great ambassadors for our community and educate people on this amazing ecosystem that supports all our eagles and salmon, so kudos to them. On another successful year, Councillor Pryor?
Well, on the Eagle Watch one, and I was just reading the, the minutes to their yearly report, and I was just curious as to, did we ever put in decent toilets out there? I know we talked about it.
We put porta potties, didn't we?
Straight up on the deck,
Well, they're up on the deck now?
right by the kiosk, by the big education center.
Yeah, because I don't see a complaint about it, but it says maintaining their services in their better care. Is their key thing. Anyway, you're right, kudos to them.
Councillor Race, you have a few you'd like to call?
Thank you. Just with respect to number 4, and this is with respect to sponge glass reefs and glass sponge reefs in Howe Sound. And we had a very interesting presentation on this at the Ocean Watch Task Force meeting a couple months ago now, from a gentleman on Bowen Island. You might consider him a citizen scientist, like a diver, a serious diver. And they've always known that there was some down by Passage Island at the mouth of the Sound, and what they're discovering now is that there's a whole series of them marching up the Sound, and they're more or less in line with the Squamish River, the flow of the Squamish River going straight south down the Sound to Passage Island and then the Strait of Georgia. And interesting for me, I found out the reason for that is when these sponge glass reefs are being formed. The reason the word glass is in there is because there's a silica component, and that comes down the river from the glaciation and so forth, the very fine silica particles. So there's very little of it over in the west half of the Sound, although there's a couple of possible sites. But it's an interesting diagram. If you do nothing else but just look at the diagram that's included with the letter to show you the location of these, and some of them are still being verified. But the purpose of the letter is to hope for voluntary compliance with staying away from these locations with things that might harm them, for things like dropping a prawn trap on them or dragging a downrigger ball through them or things like that, because the unique feature of the sponge glass reefs in Howe Sound is that they're in relatively shallow water, 100, 125 feet and so forth, which is reachable by divers, but not found in other parts of the world where they're 400 and 500 feet deep and way out of sort of touch of everything. So it is truly one of the unique resources of Howe Sound.
And there is a call in the letter if we'd like to participate in the multi-stakeholder workshop. And just, if anyone would like to do that, there's a doodle thingy here for that. They did present some of this information at the Howe Sound Community Forum, and it's amazing. Just 2 years ago at the Howe Sound, 3 years ago, they were like, oh, we found glass sponge reefs, and now they've mapped out so many more. It's quite phenomenal. And these are very, very rare. So it's very cool. You have another letter?
No, that was it.
That was it?
Letter number 4.
No, oh, I thought you had 4 letters to pull out. Wow. Do you think you'd want to participate in this?
Yeah, I'll look at that.
Okay, great. Any other letters to pull? Don't see any hands. Motion to receive the letters, moved by Councillor Kent, second by Councillor Black and Wolf. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We have minutes from the special business meeting of May 1st, regular business meeting of May 1st, committee of the whole May 8th, special business meeting of May 8th, and special business meeting of May 8th. Second one. Move receipt of the minutes, moved by Councillor Elliott, second by Councillor Black and Wolf. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. There's recommended motions from the May 8th Committee of the Whole that Council direct staff to explore potential lease agreement with Wood Fibre LNG for district-owned road and land at Darrell Bay based on the presentation to Council on May 8th, 2018. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Black and Wolf, seconded by Councillor Pryor. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Kent and Elliott opposed. Motion carries. Grant aid request for Squamish Social Sundays. That council approved grant aid to Christopher Hill in the amount of blah, 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 and whatever. It's too long to read. I'll move it. Is there a second? Or second by Councillor Black and Wolf. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Is there any business arising from the minutes? Seeing none, we have... Yep.
I'm just curious about Garibaldi Springs. I know I mentioned it to you because I know when you know, the Sky development went sideways down there. There was a timeline where they had to come back, and I know I mentioned it to you, I'm just mentioning it again because I tried to talk to Doug about it. I just thought maybe just a quick little brief thing if you want.
So council didn't approve third reading of the OCP. The applicant can come back with a significantly modified OCP amendment that council can then reconsider. The zoning bylaw currently sits at second reading. The zoning bylaw would have to comply with whatever OCP may or may not come forward in the future, and so it could be rescinded to first reading, or it will just sit where it is if there's no OCP amendment.
But is there like a length of time that they have to come back, or?
I don't believe so, Gary.
Robin?
The development procedures bylaw does have restrictions around bringing forward new applications. However, that's completely new. We can take a look, and I think Jonas has been meeting and having conversations with the proponent on what that looks like. So
And I think
6 months.
our rules were such, and I can't
There's some
recall.
flexibility.
Yeah, that if they're bringing back just the same application, they have to wait 6 months. But if they're bringing back a substantially changed one, or significantly changed, I'm not sure how we determine that, then they bring it back when it's ready to be brought back.
Okay, well, is that right, Robin? I mean, not that I beg to differ, but I just thought that when we went through it, there was like a 16 days. But that's the number that sticks in my head. When Sky was going sideways there, and the council of the day didn't support it, we had 16 days to go back.
Oh no, that's a different situation. So that's council bringing back something for reconsideration. So that's a
And at the
totally
time,
different situation.
it was.
So if any councillor wanted to bring back this one, it has to be within 16 days, and it has to be.
It actually is 30 days now.
Yeah.
30 days. Okay.
Any other business arising from the minutes? Seeing none. Committee minutes, there's CDC minutes. There are, we'll do them one at a time because there's some motions. There is a recommended motion that the minutes be received from May 1st Community Development Committee. I'll move that. Is there a second? Or second by Councillor Kent. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. There's a committee recommendation that staff be directed to draft a policy that mandates approved video and 3D animation for all rezoning development variance applications. Are you going to move it? Moved by Councillor Pryor. Seconded by Councillor Blackman and Wolf. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. You almost missed your opportunity, kid. Pay attention. Public art, that the minutes of the Public Art Committee be received. I'll move that. Seconded by Councillor Blackman and Wolf. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Smoke Bluff Parks from May 3rd be received for information. Moved by Councillor Blackman and Wolf. Thank you very much for participating. You're my go-to guy right now. Seconded by Councillor Kent. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. There is a recommended motion that the committee request staff to begin the review and approval process for the development of the East Side Trail from the Lower Loop Trail north to the summit, and that committee representatives initiate consultation with specific user groups affected by the trail development in Smoke Bluff Park. Moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Reyes. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And there is one last amended recommendation that Patricia Payne be appointed to the Library Board for a 2-year term ending December 2019. Moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Pryor. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Staff in-camera announcements. We don't have any. Unscheduled public attendance. We have scared everyone away. Open questions period. Nobody's in the audience. Councillor staff announcements. You have something for me? I'll start. Really pleased that hospice finally has their last $300,000 to move forward. This was an announcement by the Whistler Blackham Foundation. However, it really is the volunteers, Hazel and Gloria and Judith Fothergill, who have been pushing and steering and championing this for years, so huge kudos go out to those dogged people. Went to the Sea to Sky Gala. It was Sea to Sky Community Services 40th anniversary of bringing community social services to Squamish. So started off as, I think, just a handful of employees doing 1 or 2 small programs, and has grown into a significant contributor to the social fabric of our community. So huge congratulations to them. Of course, it was Lois's last gala. She was quite sweetly emotional, but congratulations, it was a great event. Went to Quest's Keystone presentations a couple weeks ago, week and a half ago, I guess, yeah. And really awesome presentations. I have a meeting with one of them who did a study on through the Women's Center on vulnerable women in our community. So she's going to come and sit down and talk to me with her about her findings. There was another woman who did a whole analysis of Garibaldi Lake and the infiltration of seepage from the lake on the barrier and all this. She would ski up there in the winter and do all this study of how much the lake, it was so cool. There was a whole bunch of others. They're so smart and fantastic up at Quest. The students are just really quite remarkable. And then, of course, went to the, I guess it was the 10th or the 11th graduation ceremony. No, it was the 6th graduation ceremony of Quest University last weekend as well. So pretty cool. We attended Councillor, who else went to the House on Community Forum? Who didn't go? Oh, it's just me. And Sarah McJanet actually presented a marine strategy at the House on Community Forum. The Community Forum, it was great to see Stephen Foster, who you may have known had a stroke, and he was there, and so it was phenomenal to see him. But a great turnout, lots and lots of people there. It's really turned into quite a going concern and a really good collaborative voicing of and bringing together of what's going on in the whole House Sound area. It's pretty cool. Went up, Karen and Susan and I were up at the Lower Mainland Local Government Association Conference in Whistler last week. All of our resolutions passed. And also went to the Men's Shed 1-year anniversary open house on the weekend. And they've turned this Men's Shed, which is basically this workspace in the Seniors Housing Society, and they've like tripled the space now. They've got tons of members, and they're actually building community projects. They built a bathhouse in the estuary. They've built signs for Crave and the homeless shelter, and like they're doing all these sort of really cool community projects together. So they're doing a great job. I know Councillor Kent went to the RCMP open house on the weekend. I gather they had 1,000 people through the doors for that, which was pretty cool.
Fabulous, very busy.
Anybody else? Don't see any. Gary or Robin? We're good. Looking for a motion to terminate. Moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by Councillor Elliott. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.